for joining me. My name's Sarah from Highland Colours. It's towards the end of March now, and I've begun this video to show you slow fashion projects that I've made over the last couple of decades. And I've also got a section in the middle of this video which will be my rigid Heddle scarf project that I spoke about in the last episode, and you saw the yarn for it being spun in episode 10, and I will be putting it onto the loom in a few minutes, and then at the end of the video, when I've finished weaving it, I will add to this episode so that you can see it finished. So it may take a few more days to get this finished. So meanwhile, I want to talk about slow fashion. It's a very trendy word nowadays. A lot of people are interested in making things more slowly and thoughtfully and producing items that are high quality and will last. And I want to show two of my slow fashion items. I don't think when I made them that I ever intended them to be anything special, but they have withstood the test of time. This is my first piece I'm going to show you, and it was hand spun. It was dyed with onion skins, and then it was hand knitted. So it was made in 2000, the year 2000. So it's 26 years old, and it is a Norwegian pattern. I'll stand up there so that you can see a bit better. I dyed this, yes, with onion skins, and then it's just the plain white wool here. It's spun from a very soft white portion of a Jacob's fleece. So I spun it to a fingering weight. And this will see me out. There's nothing wrong with this garment. It's just as good as it was when I made it. And also a testimony to plant dyes. This really, it's faded slightly, but hardly, you know, it's good. So I have here the waist, this actually, the collar around it is the waist dye bath, so it's a lighter color than this onion skin, and it took a lot of time. It probably took me a year to make this because I made it before I had a drum carder. So this was hand carded and hand dyed, and then it was spun up on my Kromsky Symphony wheel, which is over here. So a labor of love, but I enjoyed every minute of it. It didn't need to be quick, and it's still about 26 years later. I want to say one thing about this. Because I spun it in a worsted manner, I didn't spin it in a woolen manner with a rolag. I took the bats off of my hand carders and I teased them out into a long roving, and then just spun them straight into the spinning wheel. So because of that, it's a very smooth thread, and the pilling has been minimal. There are a few pills on here, but I've never depilled this. I'm not a fan of those wooden handled brush depillers because they just really pull the fibers, and I think they actually add to the problem because they actually fluff up the surface of your wool. I haven't ever tried one of those battery powered ones. I think they might be better. Somebody can tell me. Anyway, I haven't depilled it because it hasn't needed to be really. There's one or two pills. So that's that garment, and I still wear that frequently. This one was made in 1999. And I didn't spin this on the Kromsky. I spun this on an Ashford wheel, and it has been spun to, again, a fingering weight. It's a Shetland wool, and this one was woven on my rigid Heddle, 24-inch wide rigid Heddle loom, and it was pieced up the back. You can see the piecing, and the pockets and the collar were woven with a different coloured weft to give a contrast. So the red in this is madder root and madder root waist. I've got two different shades, and then the murret of the Shetland. And again, this was spun in a worsted manner, and I've had very little pilling on this. There are some pills on here, but considering the amount of wear, I had this on me last week, so it's just in regular use still, and it just won't wear out. There's a pill there I want to pull off, but yeah, I haven't really needed to do much. My mother made this. She's passed away now, but she made the buttons on there out of what do you call that stuff, Fimo, and she put a nice little edging in it, and she overlocked it and put this red insides to it. So yes, I really love that, and it holds some memories for me. A very classic design. I think if we keep things very classic, then they just keep going, don't they? She also made this. This is an artist's overall sort of garment that she made, and she did all this stitching here. So this took time. This is the point I'm making, is it doesn't have to be something I produce for next week. I'm going to be starting a new project on the Kromsky here. The Kromsky. I'm going to be spinning some of those Shetland fleeces that I showed in episode 10. I've picked out two that are very soft, and I'm going to be spinning those together as one yarn and knitting a sweater. So I won't be showing that next week. Might be a year, but I'll get there. Now I want to show something else that is really slow fashion. When we moved to this property in 2020, I had a metal detector, and I dug up a couple of square meters of my back lawn because I had heard that there were Anglo-Saxon finds in this area, and there were Roman encampments here. There was supposedly some kind of Roman remains discovered in a field that is just a couple of 100 yards from this property. Now, I didn't know what I might find, but I was very pleased to dig up a buckle. It's not Roman. I'll show this here, but I don't think you'll be able to see it very easily, but I'll try and post a close-up picture of it off to the side. It's made of bronze, and the reason I know about this is because somebody else has found one in the UK and posted a picture online and gave all of the background for it. This is in such good condition. Yeah, made of bronze. It hasn't rusted. There is some surface tarnishing on it, which I haven't even touched. I wouldn't dare. But the dates that were being given for these were 1200 to 1600. So I'm thinking this might make a really nice way of bringing like a shawl or something together, and there's a blacksmith up the road, and I might ask him to make me a pin for it. So that's something else going around in my mind. I think about that one. Anyway, I'm going to go into the house now and do the rigid heddle setup for the scarf, and at some point I'll get back to finishing this video and showing the finished item. I've just moved into the kitchen to put the rigid heddle loom up on my kitchen table, and I'm going to just show a little bit of film footage of me warping it up with all hand spun yarns. I like to keep to merino, silk, camel type of yarns for scarves because they're ultra soft, but with this scarf the main yarn will be the Shetland that I spun in episode 12, and that's what it looks like. And I've spun it to a light chunky weight. It was quite difficult to actually regulate the thickness of this yarn because I was spinning it from the locks, so you can actually see the tips of the locks, which were sun bleached. They are giving that the tweedy look that it has, and I really like the way that looks. So I'm hoping that that will really show out in the finished scarf. So I'm going to just get on with warping this up. I'll show a little bit of footage of that and then I'll move on. So I have somebody else at the other end tensioning this slightly for me, so you can do it on your own, but it's just always easier to have somebody help. I always use these little sticks that I have, a collection of them, and I like them. I've used paper before and cardboard sticks, and don't necessarily have to use wooden ones. I'm not trying to give a video tutorial on rigid Heddle weaving. I'm just showing what I'm doing and how I do it. There will be more efficient ways of doing lots of things that I do, but this is just to show the process. So I've just moved the camera around a little bit more to show how I'm doing this. Obviously, if you're putting a longer warp on here, these sticks would just make this much bulkier. So I can see how paper or card would be a better solution. These are just little oak strips. Well, not all oak, but most of them, that we made on the circular saw from strips of oak flooring that were left over from putting a floor in our living room. Some of them are old pieces from warp sticks left over from another loom that I had. So those are some of the sticks. These are the slithers of oak. They're very thin, and we've sanded around all the edges. These are cardboard ones that actually came with the loom, and these are just pine ones left over from a Glymacra weaving loom that I used to own, which I cut down. So I have all the warp on now. I ended up having to use a few of the cardboard warp sticks in there because I ran out. So I'm just going to cut the ends, and then I'm going to start threading through each one of these slots. I do have a Vari-Dent reed, but it fits onto my 24-inch weaving loom, and because this thread that I've spun will go through this heddle okay, I haven't bothered to go up to the next size of loom in order to accommodate this yarn. But you could really be putting all sorts of yarns together in a scarf like this, and as you've probably noticed, there's quite a bit of difference between that blue thread and that Shetland there. That's definitely more of a double knitting weight, and this one a chunky. So I'm not worried about that because it just adds to the handmade look of the whole thing. It will all even out, and it doesn't need to be all the same. But if you have a very chunky thread, then those Vari-Dent reeds are really useful, so that you can have one section that is really chunky like an art yarn and another section that is a finer yarn, and they're really nice for doing scarves. Before I go any further, I always just check to make sure that I threaded these properly and didn't miss anything. It has been known, so I just pull them up and then down like that, just to be able to see, did I catch every single hole and every slot. So yeah, this is looking good so far. Nope, there's one I missed. So that was good, I checked. So I have to go back and do that one. Thankfully, it's at the end. I'm just tying these now onto this stick at the front. In comparison to the Glymakra floor loom, which I used to own, this is almost like a toy, but it does the job, and they're very affordable, and I really enjoy them, these rigid Heddle looms. I know they're not quite so versatile, but they suit me, and I think also anybody who spins yarn probably needs to do this because it certainly gets rid of your stash very quickly. So I'm just going to tighten these all up now. I've put in chunks of warp about every inch. So I've got sort of 9.5 inches worth there somewhere. Maybe a little bit more. But this will shrink a little bit once it is washed, and I'll slightly full it when it's done. So that's all of those with one knot in so far, and I'm just checking the tension. It's pretty good. Possibly this one at the end needs a little bit of tightening up. And now I'm going in the other direction. I don't know if I need to go over twice like that, but I always have done. There, so that's all of them tied in. Now I'm just going to double check that I did it right. So I've got all of those in the right holes. Yes. So now all I need to do is put some packers in here before I can start weaving. And I want to put enough packers in so that I've got enough warp threads left over to put some kind of fringe on here. My preferred way of packing this is to use bits of kitchen roll like this. And the reason for that is that, well, I used to use just bits of rag, but when you come to pull this out, then you have a longer piece to pull out the next time and a longer piece to pull out the next time, and it can actually end up pulling the weaving a bit, and I just wasn't keen on that. So I've gone over to using these, and they're fine. And I reuse them each time, so it's not wasteful. I have a big stack of them here. So there we go, we can get started now. I'll just show putting in a few of these. So I'll just put in a few inches of those, and then we'll get started on the weaving. I just use an old Leclerc stick shuttle that I have, and it's way too long, but that doesn't matter. I make it work. I've now clamped this rigid Heddle loom down to the table, so it's not going to be shifting about. I have a funny feeling that I'm not going to have quite enough of this yarn to finish this scarf, so I'm probably going to have to go back and spin another half bobbin. I know now more or less how much yarn it takes to do one of these scarves, and I can pretty much tell from looking at what I've got left that it's not going to be quite enough. I think that's because I've spun it a little bit thicker than I usually do. And that was because of the nature of the spinning. It was the locks. It wasn't something I got into a sort of 4-ply weight. So I'm just beginning the weaving now. It's a slow process on a rigid heddle, but that's fine. I'm not in a hurry, and it's quicker than knitting, we'll say. Just taking time over my edges because I don't want them to look sort of ragged on the edge. I want to have a nice crisp edge on a scarf. So that does take a little bit of time to just look at what you're doing. I like this shuttle because it's got this, I don't know if you can see that there, it's just got an edge on it, so it can be useful for packing the weft down. I also think that as a hand spinner and a knitter, I use my hands and my body to sit at the wheel, to hold the needles repeatedly, and it's actually good to vary what we do so that we're not wearing out parts of our body on one particular craft. I think it's good to have a variety of things like this. Now, one of the things I'm really enjoying about this is I'm going to lift the camera. It's going to not be very stable here for a second, but it's actually coming rather nicely here. I don't know if you can see that. It's the different greys in there are really quite pretty. So yeah. Please forgive the shaking camera. I'm hand holding this just to show outside on my woolly board the finished Felix cardigan. I have it blocking here and I've got the buttons on and it's now completed. So I was very pleased with this pattern and I'm going to be knitting it again, as I said before. I think it took about 750 grams of very light chunky weight. I think it was about 110 yards to the 100-gram hank. I know that's old and new money, but that's how my brain works. But anyway, the lighting this morning isn't great because of the lack of sunshine here, but in fact it's just beginning to rain and I'm going to head indoors. But I did just want to show these buttons again now that I've got them on. They're made by Jess of Greenbird Boutique on Etsy, and she's put a sort of nice natural colored glaze over a terracotta button, and these came in a pack of 2, 3, 4, 5. So I actually used something slightly different on the bottom. Here's another one of her buttons from a different set. But I'm quite happy about that because I've got lots of colours in this garment and I think that is fine. So I'm going to be knitting this again, definitely. I have a yarn already spun for my next one. And I also have enough of this left over to be able to knit one of the novice slipovers. In fact, I've got enough to knit nearly 2 novice slipovers. So this yarn went further than I thought it would. So that's that project. We're about 8 days on now from when I started this video, and it took me a little bit longer to weave this scarf than I had anticipated because I had to come back to the spinning wheel and spin some additional wool. I actually didn't need very much more because I still have some left now, so I'll be winding that off there and using it in some kind of small project. Anyway, I got the scarf off the loom. I took it off about 5 minutes ago, and I've got all of the offcuts and the scarf and a set of scales here so that I can weigh it and tell you how much yarn you might need for something like this. It's 250 grams. Now that I've measured is 68 in length and 8 inches in width. That's going to come down a little bit from that when I wash it, but having just taken it off, it needs now to sit for 24 hours before I do anything more with it, just to give it a chance to just relax before I twist the fringe. I always do a twisted fringe. I never sew across the bottom, and I don't like just knots, so I'll be showing that finished anyway shortly. So that's that project. Yesterday I came in here and I used the swing picker to pick 2 Shetland cross Cheviot fleeces. They were a little bit longer of a staple and a little bit coarser than just a pure Shetland, and it did a good job. I ended up with a massive bucket of picked fibre, and I decided to just experiment, and I took it to the Ashford Country Spinner spinning wheel and spun this. It was quite a quick spin. As you can see, it's very lumpy, bumpy, textured, and that's going to be a rug yarn. It's not super coarse. I don't think I'd want to wear that around my neck, but it's also a little bit more hard wearing than Shetland. So there's a core in that. It's a core spun yarn, and it's quite a textured yarn. That could be used in tapestry or rugs or on a peg loom. It's 750 grams there. I'll probably be putting that in my shop. Haven't decided yet. So the other thing I want to show that I am going to be doing soon is the Ryland wool that I spun, and I showed it in a previous episode. It was one small lamb fleece, very soft wool and slight heathering in it, so I spun the entire fleece into this yarn. I have one small ball left in the house, so I've got a total of 400 grams. I'm hoping that's enough to knit Petite Knits Lulu pullover. I'll try and post a picture. It's a nice pullover in my opinion, because it's very, I think it's quite, well, it could be dressy, but it's utilitarian as well. It's longer and it has a split side here with buttons at the side. So I think for ease of movement and also being slightly longer, it could be very useful for around the house and practical. I think that colour is good too, because it's a dark charcoaly grey brown with heathering, and it definitely will hide the dirt. Not that I want to go around in a dirty garment, but it's not going to show. So, I mean, in terms of being practical and using it out in the garden when I'm working and when I'm spinning and whatever, I think that could be quite good. So let this rest for a while, and I'm now going to twist the fringe on it. I use one of these scrunchy hair things. I'm sorry I don't know the name of it, but it's one of those things where it's battery powered and it twists 2 bits of hair in one direction and then it twists the hair back in the other direction. And it was $3.99 or something, I think. So it does that and then that. So it basically is the same as using a fringe twister. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking 2 warps. I think I'll do 2 threads at a time, because this is quite a thick thread. Well, it's not that thick, it's sort of chunky. So one from under, one from over, and then as they twist together, they will anchor in the weft. I'll just show one and then I'll speed this up. So it's putting a lot of twist into the thread to start with, and then going back on itself in the other direction. And then you push the little buttons in and put a knot in the end to anchor that all together. And because it's twisted one way and then the other way, it doesn't come apart when it's finished. So I'll just go through all of them and I'll twist them, and then I'll come back when it's finished. So I finished the scarf. I've washed it and fulled it as you saw me doing in the bowl, just very gently. I didn't do anything too drastic to it, just to rough the surface up a little bit. I used a unbranded wool wash that's very mild that I have purchased for years, and I buy it by the gallon. I'm not going to give the name of it here because you probably would buy something in your area that is for woolens, and there are lots of different products out there. I always get one that is unscented, without any colour in it, and that is ecologically friendly. So I would put clear vinegar in the rinse water, just a glug. I'm really, really happy with how soft this has come out. It's just ultra soft now. And I think that it was a soft fleece to begin with, but I didn't realize how ultra soft it was going to come out. It just was a nice surprise to pick that up, and just really, you know, it makes you want to just touch it. The other thing about this is I love plain weave. It's just so simple, isn't it? It's like this vest. It's a simple pattern, but if you've put your time and effort and energies, creativity into the actual yarn production, you can just do something simple with it, and the result can be really beautiful. And I'm really, really happy with that. I've lost a little bit of size on it. It's now shrunk in a little bit to just a hair under 8 inches in width. So I think it started out at about 8.5 inches, and I've now got just under 8 inches, which is fine. The length is 64 inches now. I've lost a couple of inches on the length, and the fringe is 2.5. So that's perfect, it works well. And I'm going to go and model it outside so that you can see what it looks like. Thank you for joining me. I hope that you've enjoyed the video, and if you would like to get more of my videos, please think about subscribing and hitting the bell icon so that you get notified when there's a new one posted, and give me the thumbs up if you've liked it, and thank you.